Yes, this is Roland Maldonado. Um, and Thomas had asked me to speak a little bit on the value of sweat lodge traditional knowledge and ceremony. Um, I guess we'll just go down the list. First off, we don't, as natives, we do not have a set dogma or a theology that we follow. We allow that open to the individual people and however they understand creation, God, creator, however they want to acknowledge that. Our basic philosophy is that creator is a spirit, and that spirit has no shape, form, or gender. So if they understand it as a paternal in that male tradition, that's fine. Again, we go back to spirit has no shape, form, or gender. The same if they have that understanding in a maternal, and they choose to recognize that feminine aspect of it. It's good with us because again, spirit has no shape, form, or gender. The same as some might have for whatever reason it expresses itself as an animal helper. And it goes back to the same thing, no shape, form, or gender. So all of those are good. The only thing that we ask is that you do not try and deify human beings because we're all humans and we don't have that capacity to, give salvation and those kinds of things. That's the spiritual part of it. And since we're not spirits at the moment, we don't have that capacity within ourselves as human beings. And some people like to acknowledge the great energy of the universe. For us, that's okay. I always like to reference that back to, Genesis. In the beginning, God spoke. What is speech? Speech is a vibration and energy that we happen to understand and acknowledge. So that works for us. Some like the great mystery of the universe. Since we are unable to understand, how the universe works, how, everything started, as intelligent as we claim to be, we cannot take a beaker or a petri dish and create a blade of grass out of, minerals and chemicals and stuff. So, our knowledge is very limited. So the great mystery of the universe also works for us. As far as like with number 2, how traditional knowledge helps or aids in healing. If we understand that we're human beings, and that's what we're trying to connect back to is being human beings, we find that many times that our people are lost, have lost that aspect of being a human being, whether it's from guilt or anger, or especially with our veterans having been in war and having had to have taken life. We tend to dehumanize ourselves. Our governments tend to dehumanize the enemy because it makes it easier to hate and kill if you don't think of them as human beings. But also we lose ourselves in that also. So we have to return to that knowledge that we're human beings and make that connection with spirit to help us to take care of things. And our belief is that those two cannot be separated. And that is, as well as, all of creation has a spirit to it, so that we have to make that connection with nature, with spirit, however you want to put it, with all of creation, that we are not better than, and that creation was not made for us, but that we are a part of it, and our responsibility is stewardship. So that helps them to ground themselves, to be able to see themselves again as human beings and to forgive themselves. Which is one of the key things in the beginning of healing. So, and then from there they learn how to pray for themselves. That they don't have to have anything special. That ability to pray or that need to pray has never been taken away or vanquished in any way. Um, and then number 3, how lodge is helpful. And then what is said in the lodge stays in the lodge. But lodge is that was a gift from Creator. It allows us to be heard. That's the whole purpose of sweat lodges, is so that we can pray and that the Creator will listen to us, because this is His gift to us, to make that connection. One of the things that, because most of the time when we're dealing with people that have been, out in secular society and have gone to war and those kinds of things, is their biggest influence is Christianity. And what we help them to understand is that lost my train of thought there. That Creator is there for us. He gave us the sweat lodge to be able to speak with Him, and we don't have to have any special language. No these or thous or thus or any of those kinds of things. What we ask for is truth. If you speak in truth, that's all that matters. And that's between you and your understanding of Creator or God, or however you want to put it. But that's between the two of you. We don't dictate what your truth is. And that allows you the freedom to gain that understanding, and also to gain that forgiveness for yourself, so that these things can be taken care of, and you can like yourself again, and you can forgive yourself and learn to love yourself. And once you do that, you'll be able to make those relationships that are important to us as human beings, make them work. And then also, whatever comes out inside of Sweat Lodge stays inside of Sweat Lodge. We don't talk about that once we come out of Sweat Lodge. If for some reason somebody has this burning desire to talk about something, you have to go and ask that person's permission to speak of those things. You can't just go over and start talking to them about it. They have the right to say no, because not everybody's ready to talk about things outside of Sweat Lodge. What is said in there stays in there. And if they say no, that they're not ready to talk about it, or they don't want to talk about it, they don't have to explain themselves. Just no is enough. And that helps it, because that helps make Sweat Lodge a safe place. That's important, because people aren't going to open up. They're not going to be able to talk about things if they don't feel that it's a safe place to speak. Number 4 is building trust and brotherhood, which coincides with number 3. That not speaking of things and what is said in Sweat Lodge stays in Sweat Lodge. That helps build trust. Trust in those that are sitting with you inside there. Trust in those that are leading Sweat Lodge. Trust in the whole aspect of how people have to work together to get things done, how they have to work together to be able to open up. One of the other things that helps also is that the fact that there is no light inside of Sweat Lodge. We close it up and cover it up enough that you can't see your hand in front of your face, which gives you a certain amount of anonymity, which allows you to speak of things that otherwise you might not be able to speak of, because people can't see you and you can't see them. So if they get a judgmental look, you're not going to see that. There's no judgment inside of Sweat Lodge. There's no there's no wrong way of saying the things that you're saying, as long as what you're saying is the truth. And since we can't dictate what your truth is, that gives you the freedom to say things and express things however they may, that you feel they need to be said or expressed. And in so doing, you gain that trust of everybody that's around you. You trust them and they trust you, which gives you that brotherhood, that feeling of you're not alone, so that you can be taken care of. Number 5 is how working to get the Sweat Lodge ready, working for a ceremony, how that works to build community, because you have to work together, whether it's because we uncover the lodge so we don't get bugs and other things living inside the lodge, so we uncover it after every use. But once you have to, put things back together, you have to work together to get the covers on. You have to work together to get the grounds ready, because we want these things to be, as far as possible, as for us, to be pretty, to be organized. So all these things have to come together. Wood has to be split. Fire pit has to be cleaned. Stones have to be gathered. Wood has to be brought in and stacked in a certain way so that we can get all these things taken care of and brought together so that we can have a ceremony. These things give a sense of community because we're all working together. It gives a sense of belonging because you're putting effort into it. You're exerting yourself to get something done. And what we found is once we do that as human beings, it gives us a sense of ownership, a sense of belonging, a sense of I'm working with my brothers and my sisters to get this taken care of, which automatically gives community, which also makes it easier to open up inside so that we can speak of these things. And since we're working with veterans, we found that it's easier for veterans to speak in front of other veterans because they know what you're talking about. They've gone through some of the experiences, maybe not to the same extreme, but they've gone through there. They've been there. So you automatically have that sense of brotherhood and sisterhood inside there, which also increases that sense of community and belonging. You're not ostracized. You're not looked down upon or frowned upon. Those things that you can't speak of with other people because they have no understanding of what it's like to be under fire, to have to, take somebody else's life because it was war. Those kinds of things, and then we also found as far as our Native veterans that there's that added aspect of when you go somewhere else, you're a tribal person taking the life of another tribal person who never did anything to you. They've never wronged you. They've never done anything that should require you to take their life, but our government is asking you to do that. So that's an aspect that a lot of times gets overlooked because people don't have that understanding on a tribal basis, what it's like to attack another tribe for no reason and to do the things that are necessary in combat. And then number 6 is taking knowledge and turning it into wisdom. So we like to help them understand that when you take in this knowledge, that practical application is what makes it wisdom. Wisdom is the practical application of knowledge in your everyday life. So these things that we show them and that we talk to them and teach them about, it's important that they understand that this is something not just for a once in a while thing, not just for going to church on Sunday or something like that, but what we're showing them and giving them is a way to take care of themselves every day. When they're struggling, they may make those connections, and then that way they have somebody to reach out to, somebody to talk to, somebody who understands what they're going through and where they're coming from. One of the things that we don't have on here, but in order, what we like for people who are attending Sweat Lodge is to be sober, at least 3 days. Once they go the first time, they'll gain that understanding of why it's so important. But our basic Sweat Lodge Science 101, water turns to steam at about 225, 235 degrees. Our skin begins to burn at about 125 or so. And that's why the spiritual aspect of Sweat Lodge is so important, because we ask those spirits to come in and sit with us. We do introductions when we go in there so that those spirits know who we are and where we came from. Because at one point, everybody did something, no matter where they were at, everybody did something to connect with that spirituality before we became civilized. So those spirits, because they are spirits, time and distance have no bearing or have no meaning to them. That's a physical thing, and that's us. So we need that extra help while we're in there to deal with the extremes that we're going to go through. The extremes of Sweat Lodge are important because, especially when you're dealing with combat vets, they know the meaning of extreme, but they need that added pressure, that added extremeness to help them to deal with what they're carrying around, that burden that they're saddled with now that they're back and they're vets and they're wanting to become human beings again. But this helps them to come together and to work as a unit, to coalesce them back together again. So that's important. And then once they go through it, they'll understand that Sweat Lodge we're gonna take them to the edge of heat exhaustion and maybe a step over, and then bring them back. And we're going to do that 4 times as we go through the ceremony. So they'll begin to understand that alcohol is going to take away their the moisture, the water in their body, and then once they go to Sweat Lodge is going to take it all. It's going to take everything they have, and if they've been drinking, then they're not going to have anything to give, and it's going to they could be hurt from doing this. So, and it's something that whoever is leading the Sweat Lodge has already learned to watch the people that are in there, to evaluate them by listening to their voices when we have the door closed and you can't see them, but you can hear people. You can hear them moaning and groaning. You'll be able to tell if they're in distress. And help them to understand how to relax while you're in there, how not to focus on the heat and the extremeness of it, and how to redirect their thoughts. And once they learn to do this in these extreme conditions that we manifest in Sweat Lodge, then it makes it a little bit easier to do that when they're not in Sweat Lodge, but in regular society. To slow down, not to get excited, to control their breathing, to watch what they say, to not overreact. All these things are important outside when they're dealing with regular secular society, especially those who have never served, which is becoming very, very prominent nowadays. And it gives them a place to laugh and joke about, all the video games and how people think that that's reality, but the reality of it is not. It's still fantasy. So, and then again, we like to make sure that they understand they have the freedom of thought, complete freedom of thought, to interpret those things that are around them with our traditional knowledge. Many times our elders got their knowledge and their wisdom base from dreams, and we can't control or legislate how people dream. So that they have to have that freedom, that ability to interpret those things that are around them, and how to change that knowledge into wisdom so that they can use it and teach the younger ones and teach other ones about different things, and how there is more than one interpretation or more than one way of doing things, and that we have to be open to change. We have to be open to allowing differences to exist, and that we don't have to be combative or agitated because somebody does something different or thinks differently. It allows them to leave those differences and those hard feelings in there with the rocks and the fire, and they don't have to carry it anymore. And it's a very slow process. We begin to understand how we can transfer this knowledge and these different within themselves, and then from there to their immediate families and around there. Another way of developing community is that a lot of times after Sweat Lodge, there's a feast. You come out, you eat, you drink water or juices or something like that to rejuvenate yourself, to get energy, put that moisture back in. which is also that we can use to bring their family to a particular earth, just to bring water or juice or soda or whatever it is. But that way, it's not just them. It's not just those that are protected, but they also outside support them, those that are sitting in there with them. So where they can make those connections with their family again in a safe environment, in a non-harmful, non-confrontational way. So, and those are just some of the beginnings of the things that we go through while we're there. And that's kind of all I have for right now. So, okay.
Thank you, Roland. That was wonderful, and I'm so glad that we are able to get that presentation. It was really interesting. A lot of good points that you made, and a perspective that I think a lot of people don't consider. So thank you so much, and definitely a new way of healing that.
Okay.
So thank you so much for participating, and I really appreciate you giving this presentation, and thank you for just being a part of this summit as a whole.